Okay.
Yes, so now I start.
Okay. Nice. So I kind of I don't know if it's true, but I feel like when I'm anxious or maybe worried about something in the future, because I believe that I cannot love all the sensation that I will have at this later point of time. For example, if I'm afraid of maybe not having the job I have today, because I feel like I'm going to be dissatisfied with the next one. So I'm like unsatisfied right now to feel to prevent me from being unsatisfied later. And so I feel like that's how dukkha works, kind of. Maybe one way it works.
Well, we normally move from dissatisfaction to maybe a short satisfaction back into dissatisfaction, and we go in that cycle on a regular basis. And how we're learning to interrupt that cycle is by intentionally putting the mind in a good state, to intentionally bring it back. At least right now it's satisfied. But we have to keep practicing that over and over again, uh, because there's kind of a momentum
Yes, yes.
that builds up. It's almost like that we're going downhill. That's why they use words like hitting rock bottom and things like that. So there's kind of a gravity or something that's pulling us. So we have to keep remembering to tap the brakes, to stop. Otherwise, the agitation will build up.
Yeah. I can see the sometimes the stream of thoughts, and when I interrupt it, I can almost see like where it would lead and how much trouble that would have been if I didn't notice like fast enough. Or
Mhm.
yeah,
So this is what we're practicing with that gladdening of the mind, or changing the thoughts from unwholesome thoughts to wholesome thoughts. This is just about the whole practice, but it has to be practiced over and over and over again. Just like any beautiful piece of music has to be practiced over and over and over again before it's worthwhile being, let us say, demonstrated or performed in public. But it's only after that happens quite a lot to where the musician really feels at home and comfortable with that piece of music so that he can play his way through it, literally play like a toy.
yeah, yeah.
And so there's these two stages of practice that can be referred to as, in the beginning, of a practice that is almost like more work. And then in public, after we practice things, then we perform it. And after we perform long enough, we get so skilled with that performance that now it becomes playful. Now it becomes a dance. And these things happen in almost all skills. It happens certainly in martial art.
Mhm.
That you could say, in fact, the black belt itself, the first black belt, is that acknowledgement. Now it's time to perform. You've practiced enough. But those higher dans, those higher black belts, are for those who are making that progress from performing arts into a lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, this is what we're also looking for, in the sense of, can we sit in private and get our mind in a really good state so that we can go start to deal with the world and keep the mind in a really good state? And
Mhm.
then after we practice that for a long time, that means that now we can deal with the world in a really good state. But we had to
Yeah.
practice and perform that and do it over and over again.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like I'm at the point where I try to transfer the sitting practice to the everyday life,
Mm-hmm.
and also wanted to ask you a bit about what anchor I could use um, during my life to remember enough, because I tend to forget a lot more than when I'm, at home, when I'm in this
Actually,
environment.
one's life is absolutely filled with anchors. All we have to do is to get a short list, okay?
Yes,
And
short
that the
is better.
Buddha has some recommended. One is the recommendation of changing postures, which we'll talk about in a moment. And the other one is when we're using our hands, the touching, reaching, grasping, holding cycles that we go through. In our lifestyle, the way that we're trained in the West is that we pay attention to the object. I mean, after all, I'm holding this object because I want it. If I didn't want the object right now, I probably wouldn't be holding it. It depends upon how heavy it is and all kinds of stuff. Or it's going to be handy, as they say. Okay. And what we're beginning to change now is the focus from the object that we're holding into the act of holding, the hands themselves. We're beginning to pay attention to what the body itself is doing rather than the body is only operating on the object and we're paying attention to the object. So it's a change of focus. Watching what the hands are doing, and the way that we can do that is the easy, comfortable way is to talk about slowing the actions of the hands down, to become aware and mindful of what the hands are doing, because the hands are actually quite busy, often doing things that we're not paying any attention to at all. People strumming, or let us say in any particular meeting, notice how much agitation, worry, and flurry, and shuffling of papers, and wrapping of the pencils, and all kinds of stuff is happening because people are not paying attention to what the body is doing. So when we're sitting quietly in meditation and actually keeping the hands still is one way of practice. The new way of practice then is to not let us say, work with holding the hand still and doing it that way, but rather go ahead and have the intention of using the hands all you please, just slowly and carefully watch what you're doing.
So I must not lose the awareness of my what I'm doing. My
Hmm.
fingers, and, yeah.
Whatever the hand plan is to do, pay close attention to what the hands are doing upon that object. So, let me find something, an example. All right, so here's the example, is this piece of tape. When I'm approaching it, I'm going to open my hands widely, intentionally, and then narrow down with the idea, what's the first thing that I'm going to touch?
Mm,
Is it going to be with the thumb or the finger, something like that? But I'm going to start paying attention now when I'm picking it up to what does each finger feel?
okay, yes.
Am I aware of each of the fingers as all five fingers are touching this object? Does each of the, because each finger is sending information back, but I'm not generally paying attention to it unless it starts to slip.
Yeah, there's a lot of information.
And there is a
Yeah.
lot of information there. So we begin to pay attention to the information that our hands are sending us because they're chock a block full of tiny bits of information, much of which is actually quite pleasurable, just to allow the hands to touch things. I mean, this is the reason why we pet dogs. We enjoy using our hands. Humans are like that. And so we should actually get in touch with that touch sensation. So that's one item, is the hands. Now, there's also the idea of the postures of the body that we can begin to use and to focus, because after all, this is a body meditation. Anapanasati is about the body, learning the body, relaxing the body, and paying attention to what postures the body is in and what movements the body is making. So we can also look at it in the sense of the postures of what is my face doing? What are my hands doing in relation to the face? And am I sitting? Am I standing? Am I lying down? And when I'm doing any of those postures, when I change posture, that's a good point in time. An example now that I'm giving you is the chair meditation. Whenever you get out of the chair, why are you getting out of the chair? I mean, there you are, all comfortable and serene, and everything is wonderful and nice. And now we're getting up. Why? We start questioning, why is it that we're getting up out of the chair? And a way to help us do that is normally when people getting up out of a chair in our society, they're getting up to go. We're not just standing up. We're going someplace.
Yes. Yes.
That in fact, if the only times that we would be standing up would be because some guest has come into the room, and generally, that's not often. Perhaps maybe the cops. So getting up is not what we normally do. It's going. So the recommendation with this new process that we can actually call meditation is the anchor of that whenever you get up, you stand up and you wait for a couple of seconds and then start to move. But you want to stand up and gain stability with the thought of, why did I get out of my chair? What's the point? So we begin to reflect upon, because the reason you got out of the chair is because when you were in the chair, you thought of something. And
Yes.
oftentimes we're thinking of something, and the next thing we know, we're out running towards it, like the refrigerator or the bathroom or the other room, whatever. We're heading that direction without even giving a thought to the thoughts we're having.
Yeah.
So, how many times a day do you get up out of your chair? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times?
Probably around 20, I guess.
We'll start to keep track of this.
Yeah.
Start to notice. I mean, just as an observation throughout the day, how many times do you get up and why? And when you do get up, stand up to nail this home.
Mm.
A lot of students come back and say, I could get about 10 steps away from the chair and then I would remember. My answer to that would
Yeah.
be, okay, that's when you stop, you stand, and you reflect. I made it 10 steps before I remembered to stand. Let me shorten that distance next time. So we kind of plan in a little goal of sati, because it's a
Mm.
very easy thing just to remember. And so this is how we're going to start plotting our, let us say, next practice of sati is to become aware of the things that we're doing, and getting up out of a chair is a really excellent one.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is that, well, if getting up out of a chair is good, what about sitting down in a chair? Because that's also changing our posture. The answer to that is that yes, in fact, we do sit down in the chair to basically take a load off of our feet. So why don't we also use that as an opportunity to unload the mind also? So every time that you sit down in the chair, not all the time, this is the mentality of the Westerners, but whenever you're sitting down, remember that as you're sitting down, you're actually going to relax intentionally. You're not sitting down to get work done. You're not sitting down to come piddle on the keyboard or to write an email. You're sitting down to sit down, to take a load off, to relax. And so now is a time for taking a deep breath and just relax. And take 2 or 3, maybe 4 deep breaths and get your mind in a really, really good state to reward yourself for having sat down. And now we can go do whatever we were intending to do. But we're beginning to put these breaks in there more often. So now every time you stand up, you've got to, well, why did I leave? What's the point of me leaving? And every time I sit down, I come back into that state of everything is okay, everything is fine. Wow, no need to get up. Next time I start to get up, I'll remember I don't have to really get up now, do I? I can sit here.
That breaks up the day with sati a lot more, I guess.
Yes, many times
Mm.
during the day it gives you an opportunity for sati. Every time that you pick something up with your hands,
Yeah.
almost think of it also with the breath, that when you pick something up, you also take a deep breath. Whenever you put something back down, you do so with an intentional, deep, long out breath, a sigh. Wow, I've let that go. Don't have to worry about that anymore. And so by this slowing down of getting up, instead of getting up and going, we get up and we stand. That when we sit down, we don't sit down to keep going, we sit down to stop and relax. We're slowing the hands down, and we're tying it more and more with the breath. And so this is the way that we can begin to practice, knowing that you're going to forget about doing this a lot of the time.
Yeah, I'm sure. At first, yeah.
Instead of fussing at yourself for forgetting when you do remember, congratulate yourself for I did remember this time.
Mhm. I remembered that I forgot.
Hmm. And that it's okay that you forgot, but it's even
Yeah.
more okay that you remember. And yet, when we remember, we fuss at ourselves for having
Hmm.
forgotten instead of praising ourselves for this time having remembered.
Yeah.
Funny that we're hard on ourselves for the wrong reasons. We should
Yeah.
congratulate ourselves when we remember to practice rather than fussing at ourselves when we remember to practice. Isn't that interesting? Because why? I mean, how can you possibly, out of the blue, just start fussing at yourself for having forgotten to do something? No,
Yeah.
you don't do it
It's
then. You remember to do it. And then that's when you fuss at yourself
yeah.
for having forgotten when, in fact, you didn't forget. You remembered it right now.
Yeah.
So, this is the practice that we're going to have is to make the intention to remember and then congratulate yourself when you do remember.
Yes. Okay. The
That's the way to go. So, do you have any questions about this?
yes, when usually I focus on the breath when I'm sitting. So when I'm doing things, maybe focusing on my hands, um, some awareness will not be directed to the breath um, at the same time. Is this alright, or is the correct practice supposed to be at the same time the breath and the hands and the standing up? Um, I'm kind of having so sometimes when I sit, I feel like a good feeling, and then I focus on the good feeling, and I forget about the breath. And so I'm not too hard on myself about this, but I'm just wondering, like, what would correct
Okay.
practice be?
Well, putting the engineer's hat on, the question is, what do you mean by, quote, quote, at the same time?
Well, I heard you say this already. Like, you cannot focus on two things.
Right, right. So things happen, they don't happen at the same time unless you're having a particular perspective of a time period or a time.
Hmm.
Okay. So back, in fact, the further things go back in time, the more the time compresses, so that it looks like that the Greek civilization and the Roman civilization were deeply embedded and entwined. To where no, the glory of the Greek civilization was long before the Romans. And in fact, the Romans just came in and wiped out the Greeks and took their culture, and that helped the Romans. But this was all at different time periods, and so we kind of think when we're kids that all of that
Yes.
happened at the same time because it happened in ancient history.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And that we also see coincidences that may have fairly large periods of time between them. This happened, and then I think about it happening at the same time that this other thing happens, and I think that they're related to, or in fact, the only relationship is my mind. That's the relation. That's where the relationship is. That's the glue, is our memories and our recollections. So, in that regard, we can say that everything is happening, but a lot of stuff is happening very fast. That there's a huge amount of overplay and interreactions and whatnot like that. But the way that the human brain operates is kind of on a clock or a cycle that they refer to often as the alpha wave, which could be like one mind moment in that wave time, which they've recorded. And there's a lot of ways of recording it, and with examples would be reaction time, because most people have a reaction time about 300 milliseconds, maybe down to 250, maybe down, if they're very sharp, like a black belt, they're down at about 200 milliseconds. But stars, the Heisman Trophy winners, or the superstars, their reaction time is even faster, down to about maybe 185, 180. That would be world class of how quick our reaction times. And in a lot of sports, actually operate on trying to get that reaction time fast increased. We can actually train to get that reaction time fast. That's what sati really is all about, is how quick
Mm.
can we wake up and do something. So this whole idea of reaction time is not just a scientific puzzle for humans, it's actually really built into anapanasati also. Are we
So
going to
like
let the mind sit there and dream and dream and dream and dream and dream and then interrupt it? Or are we going to quickly, as soon as it happens, aha, I see you?
mm, yes.
And in this regard, what we mean then is that our time, because we're speeding up or watching what's going on. And the surprise is that the practice that we do is we slow things down
Mm.
so
Yeah.
that we get a different perspective of it, to where in fact what we're actually doing is speeding things up in another regard.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so when we understand that when we start slowing things down, we begin to actually see the intervals like slow motion. We begin to see the intervals that we used to think all this happened at the same time, to in fact, no, it doesn't.
Mm.
Each one is on its own. I've got a really clear experiment of that, and that is that I've got a lead torch, a flashlight, and when I shine that on the fan of the CPU, it looks like that it's going very, very, very slowly. It's almost alarmingly, uh-oh, the CPU fan's not working.
Mm.
But if I take that flashlight away from that and look at the blades themselves, they're spinning very fast. hmm But the speed of the light is, in fact, it's got its own frequency that is actually a pulsating light. It's not a solid light. If it were a solid light, like a fluorescent, but this light is actually a lead that's pulsing. And because of that pulsing part of it, this is exactly the same reason why wheels on cars look like sometimes they're running backwards
Yes.
on videos. Okay, it's because of the timing between the video camera doing its thing and the wheels doing its thing. And when they coincide, it looks like that the wheels are standing still or moving very, very slowly, right?
Okay, yeah.
But they're in fact not related. The relationship is in the eye of the human being that sees these standing waves.
Hmm.
Okay. And so what we can then recognize is, oh, that means that a whole lot of stuff is happening at a whole lot of different frequencies. And what human beings are able to do is see the interference and the waves that stand and whatnot like that with all of this stuff that's happening. And that's what we're good at. This is the pattern recognition that makes the human brain, that we can see patterns. Okay. And the whole delusion is the patterns of things that are happening, quote, quote, at the same time or happen to line up or certain ways like that. But this is all human perception. And when we stop perceiving things and start looking at them more directly, that means that we're actually speeding up our camera, which is another way of saying that when the camera speed is very high, that means that now we can actually approach it as if it were going in slow motion.
Is that why like 10 minutes of sitting, or maybe like when you exercise and you do a plank, 1 minute pass by like very long time, and when you're like having fun and thinking about
Now,
stuff,
that
just
actually what you're talking about there is a psychological trick that's being played.
okay.
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 And what is that? That if you give the students 45 minutes to sit or an hour to sit, then they're not going to just go do it. They're going to sit there for a long time waiting to do it. Then the mind gets tired and then they don't want to do it anymore. And they want the bell to ring and they wasted their 45 minutes. But
Hmm.
if you give them 10 minutes and say, sit down and be happy for the next 10 minutes, then the students will actually do it. Oh, I don't have much time. I'm actually going to go ahead and do it now.
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
another reason for putting time periods shortly,
Mm.
is to say, okay, you got 10 minutes, wake up, be happy for 10 minutes. Now we're actually taking it from 10 minutes down to uh, less than 1 minute, down to maybe about 10 seconds.
Mm.
Every time you sit down, go through the whole thing in Anapanasati and do it now in 10 seconds. Practice speeding that up. So first 45 minutes to be happy and failing. Now we're doing it in 10 minutes successfully. Can we now do it in 10 seconds every time we sit down? Every time that we pick up an object, can we come into the present moment, be here now? Because you have plenty of opportunity. All we have to do is choose the anchors.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a lot of anchors already,
Uh-huh. That's a
especially with the hands,
mm-hmm.
um, like all the time. Like, so yeah, it's
You'd be
great.
surprised. Because people are generally in a state of agitation much of the time, piddling with things, holding things, doing things with their hands. And when we start to pay attention to that, sometimes we don't even like it. We think that now that we're looking at our hands, we say, I'm even more agitated than I used to be when I wasn't watching the hands. Oh, yes, the hands were more agitated then. You just didn't know it. Now that you're watching the hands, you can see how agitated they are. Or another way of saying it is that they are hungry for sensory input.
Mm.
The hands themselves are hungry for sensory input, which means that if we pay attention to that sensory input, that makes the hands feel even more satisfied.
Okay, yeah, kind of see what you mean.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. And is the how to say this? I felt like when I'm being more aware, when I'm practicing, taking the time to sit, I feel like I have a lot more like free time. And when I'm always doing stuff, I have the same time, but like the day passes by really quick. Is this kind of like related to the psychological aspect?
Precisely so. You're right. That in fact, that if we've gotten ourselves into a habit of, I don't have a much time, then that means that we have to crowd a whole lot of activity into the time that we have. And that's the Western mentality. What we're doing here instead is we're beginning to slow down. And as we do, we recognize that, hey, I've got a huge amount of time. I have so much time, in fact, that I can waste it happily.
Yeah, and that feels really good. Just do nothing.
Yeah, I've got
Yeah.
so much time on my hands. Literally, my hands don't have to do anything. That we have
Yes.
been lied to in our society. The whole society lies to everyone, and the whole crowd of us are in the same ball of lies. And that lie can actually you can say that there is a one word description for that whole pack of lies, and that is the word important. Make
Yeah.
stuff important, and now people have to do it. When things are not important, there's nothing to do.
Yeah. I mean, important is a matter of who's watching the, like what you think about the sensation or the thing you're,
Mm-hmm. And so
the
we've got a
condition.
new way of importance, and the importance now is the importance to just watch what's going on, be here now. Experience what reality there is right here, right now. Because otherwise, the importance is a false importance about the future,
Yes. Yes.
mhm, rather
Like a
than the
thought.
importance of
Yeah.
right now.
Hmm.
So, this is a whole new way of looking. And when we look to slow down, we begin to recognize there's an abundance of everything. I've just been missing it all because I was in too much of a hurry.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I guess I just have to practice right now.
All right. Well, that's right. You keep practicing, keep coming
Yep.
back, keep coming back, keep coming back over and over and over again. Keep watching what you're doing and making sure that what you're doing is wholesome.
Hmm.
Breaking those wholesome thoughts back in until you have one wholesome thought after another after another. This is the practice. But it needs to be repeated over and over again. So every time you sit down, repeat that a few times. Every time you stand up, go through that. Why am I standing up? What's the point of this? And, I could sit back down. I bet you'll even find sometimes that after you stand up, you'll sigh and sit right back down and laugh.
Yeah, I'm
Hey, I
sure.
didn't have to go anywhere at all, did I?
Yeah. Or maybe you walk back to the to the chair at first.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right. I'll
Oh,
start practicing this. I'll let you know how
excellent.
it goes.
Okay, Laurent. We'll
All
see
right.
you again.
Thank you
Congratulations
very
on
much.
your practice. I see that you're making good progress. Good.
Thank you. Have a good
Keep
day.
going.
Bye bye.
You have a really good moment right now.
Thank you.
That's all I can help. The future, I don't know about, but right now, have a good day. Right
That's
now.
good enough. All right. See you.